Welcome. My name's John DeVelo. I'm a senior magistrate judge for the state of Idaho. Prior to retirement, I served over 15 years as a juvenile judge from this bench at the Ada County Juvenile Court in Boise, Idaho, and have filled in periodically since. During my tenure in court, it can easily be said that I saw enough devastation and dysfunction to last many lifetimes. So when I needed to get away from the upheaval, I would often seek refuge in my passion for fishing. The name on the side of my boat reads Judge Bubba, and I love to bass fish and do it competitively whenever I can. Let me now tell you about the day in court when my job responsibilities converged with my joy of fishing. I want to tell you about Tommy L. Back in 1999, Tommy, who was 11 years old, came before me to be sentenced for setting a mattress on fire in somebody's garage, for angrily tipping over all the desks in his classroom, and for beating on his little brother. Why, you may ask, such trouble for a boy so young? Well, his parents divorced when Tommy was 6, following much domestic violence within the home. His father was an alcoholic with a criminal record who fled arrest warrants to California. Mother was a recovering drug user with a criminal record. There had been 23 referrals to child protection regarding neglect and abuse in the home. Tommy, who physically abused his pets, repeatedly hurt his siblings, and heard voices telling him to do things, had been hospitalized 3 times in 1999 for depression and suicide attempts and was on medications. At the time of sentencing, Tommy L. had served 41 days in detention, and his mother had not visited him once during that time. That day in court, after many years on the bench, for the first time in my judicial career, and for some still unknown reason, I promised Tommy L. at his sentencing hearing that if he would successfully complete probation and stay out of trouble, I'd take him fishing. Looking back, I probably viewed it as a safe bet, envisioning that I ultimately would be compelled to commit a kid that young with so many strikes against him to long-term residential placement with the Idaho Department of Juvenile Corrections. Instead, however, Health and Welfare removed him from his home and placed him in a stable foster care environment. With the aid of his caseworker, probation officer, foster parents, and counselors, Tommy L. successfully completed probation in 2001 without further criminal activity, and I owed him a fishing trip. Worried about what I'd gotten myself into, I procrastinated in spite of the note stuck on the edge of my computer, as well as a reminder from his probation officer that Tommy hadn't forgotten. Most certainly, therefore, a promise made by his judge had to be kept. So, reluctantly, I set up the fishing trip and convinced my buddy Doug to come along as a witness. On a beautiful day late in August 2001, we picked up Tommy L., now almost 13 years of age, from his foster parent and brought him here to Lake Lowell on the Deer Flat National Wildlife Refuge. At the launch, I put Tommy in a life jacket, sat him in my lap, and headed out, letting him steer my bass boat. Tommy had never been in such a boat, and he was so excited. When we started fishing, I hooked the first bass and let Tommy reel it in. Doug let him do the same, and by the end of the day, Tommy had also caught a few on his own pole too. We fished until almost dark, took some photos, and stopped for burgers on the way home. While ordering, Tommy looked up at me and said, "Judge Velo, I want you to know, this has been the greatest day of my life." His unexpected words struck me emotionally like I'd been hit upside the head with a baseball bat, and I barely contained my tears in front of the kid. I kept my promise over here that day, but it was Tommy L. who taught me that we adults, regardless of our busy schedules and responsibilities, should always find time to give a kid a hand up. Returning to court after that memorable day of fishing, I began realizing there are many more Tommy L's out there, more than you can possibly imagine. My experience introducing Tommy to bass fishing made me think that other troubled kids could be helped and mentored by the fishermen I competed against in bass tournaments. Good sportsmen possessing not only strong moral values, but also a stewardship of our natural resources and a youthful enthusiasm about catching fish. I envisioned holding a bass fishing tournament for kids who had committed crimes and were on probation with my court. I received a green light to proceed from the Director of the Ada County Juvenile Court Services, as well as the Board of County Commissioners of Ada County. A tournament coordinating committee was set up to organize the effort. We named the event as the Scales of Justice Bass Tournament, and it was scheduled for September 19, 2004 at nearby C.J. Strike Reservoir. The Idaho Department of Fish and Game provided the necessary fishing permits for each of the juveniles, and Idaho Power Company reserved one of its adjacent parks for our use as tournament headquarters. Local businesses and civic organizations donated funds, fishing tackle, rods and reels for the kids, plaques, hats, t-shirts, and food for our picnic. During the spring and summer of that year, tournament fishermen came forward to volunteer, as did many non-boaters who wanted to help. The kids were nominated and their parents completed liability and confidentiality waivers. Each boater had to provide a certificate of liability insurance. Teams were established with a court officer assigned as a witness in each boat, along with the fisherman and the juvenile. About 30 youth on probation with my court were transported by our agency to the lake. And even Tommy L., the young man who had inspired it all 3 years earlier, accepted an invitation to participate. For everyone involved, kids and adults alike, tournament day was magical. All the juveniles caught fish with the assistance of their boating mentors. No kids had to be returned to shore for misconduct. Each youth got to keep the donated rod and reel, and each received a plaque. More importantly, some of the kids continued relationships with their fishermen after the event. And as a fitting ending, Tommy L. won the tournament with the assistance of his fishing mentor. A promise made, a promise kept. Those young people were given a hand up and shown they could have great fun without committing crime. Following the initial event in 2004, continued interest, community support, and staff involvement have allowed the Scales of Justice Bass Tournament to be repeated every autumn since at Strike Reservoir. Our tournament committee is active throughout the year and has expanded outreach to now include invitations to participate sent to the juvenile probation departments in 18 nearby counties in Idaho and Oregon. On average, about 32 juveniles attend each year. A 4-hour fishing day is preceded by the national anthem and a numbered start for the high-powered boats, and followed by a weigh-in of fish, awards, and a barbecue. Fish and game personnel attend to conduct biological surveys on the caught fish and then to release them alive back into the reservoir. I believe these Scales of Justice Bass Tournaments benefiting kids on juvenile court probation are currently unique to Idaho as an innovative approach to reach troubled youth. Because it is a one-day event during the probationary journey of these juveniles, I'm uncertain of its benefit. However, I repeatedly see the joy in the kids' faces and the light in their eyes when they come off the water. Hopefully the juveniles will view us adults, judges, court officers, and staff, boating mentors, and volunteers from a perspective that shows them we care about their success. If we can get just one juvenile's life turned around, our effort's been worthwhile. In the event you'd like to assist us with future Scales of Justice Bass Tournaments in Idaho, please contact us. Alternatively, if you're interested in trying to establish a similar event in your geographical area, we are willing to help you get started. Contact information will be provided at the conclusion of this video. Thank you for watching.